Sanders1.com online bikes, clothing and accessories.
Welcome on board the rich planet Starship, broadcasting from somewhere high above the Earth. I'm Richard D. Hall, and I'm going to start things off with a comment on previous week's news. The mainstream media are continuing to put out stories about foxes attacking babies and young children. A few weeks ago, I saw on the front page of the Daily Mail the picture of a fox at night climbing over a garden fence where allegedly a child had previously been attacked by a fox. Why this sudden massive increase in evil fox stories? Are foxes really out of control, as our newspapers seem to suggest? It is our view that those in the establishment who wish to re-legalise hunting foxes with dogs are putting these stories on the front pages in order to sway opinion, so that at some point in the near future, when they put forward their proposed change to the law, people are more likely to accept hunting with dogs. These stories are nothing more than a psyops operation. I have no way of knowing whether the stories are genuine. Perhaps they are. But none of them warrant the headlines in the news, British national newspapers, and on BBC main television news. We here on the Starship object to the programming of the public through a controlled British media. If we see in the coming months the government tabling the bringing back of fox hunting, you heard it here first. Kenny McCaskill, who made the decision to release the Lockerbie bomber, has rejected a plea to attend a US Senate hearing. The bomber, Mohammed al-Megrahi, who was convicted in 2001 of killing 270 passengers in 1988 on a Pan Am jumbo, was let out of prison on compassionate grounds because he had cancer and was given just 3 months to live. People are now saying that he could live for 10 years. The request by the Americans for McCaskill to be interrogated about his decision is, of course, total theatre. The real reason why Megrahi was released, which the mainstream media are conveniently ignoring, is that Megrahi's legal team had appealed against the original conviction, and his lawyers have compelling evidence that witnesses lied at the original trial and that he was framed and is totally innocent. His team is believed to have enough new evidence to overturn the original conviction, which would then cause people to ask the question, who really did blow up the Pan Am jumbo? Some rumours suggest that a certain individual who lost his life on the plane was the target of American intelligence, and that the other 269 murdered passengers were included to disguise their single targeted individual. If Megrahi had been released because he was innocent, as many people believe he is, this would have been very embarrassing, as a new search for the real perpetrator would begin. So to get round it, they most likely faked his cancer situation in order to avoid the appeal. The Americans now have to keep digging themselves into a deeper hole with more lies, pretending to be annoyed at McCaskill, who was simply a puppet on the end of their evil strings. It's time to introduce this week's guest onto the Starship. And this week, our guest has a degree in psychology and media. He has an MA in film studies. He is also studying hypnotherapy and is the lead guitarist of the band Thought Crime. He has spent the last 10 years researching the subject of mind control and how our perceptions of reality are being purposely constructed by exterior forces. So without further ado, let's activate the teleporter and get him beamed up onto the ship. It's Neil Sanders.
Hello.
Welcome on the Starship, Neil.
Thank you very much.
Did you enjoy the trip?
Oh, very much so, yes.
Good. Now, we're here to talk about a subject which I'm fascinated by, that of mind control.
Yes.
And we've been discussing it, obviously beforehand, and it's it is a huge subject,
Oh
isn't
yeah,
it?
it's vast, absolutely vast.
So could you start by telling us sort of when would, sort of modern mind control, when did that all start?
Well, I mean, even that is sort of mired in mystery itself. I mean, officially MK Ultra, which is the American mind control project for sort of mind-controlled assassins and Manchurian candidates and things like that. That started.
MK Ultra. So why is it called MK Ultra?
Well, this is where the twist comes in, because the MK comes from a German word for mind control.
Right.
Now, mind and control, and essentially, MK Ultra started under Sidney Gottlieb in 1953. However, basically, it used a lot of techniques that were already in use by Nazis in Auschwitz, Josef Mengele, and such like that. Mm-hmm. The sort of British arm of mind control would be the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, which is ostensibly it's a charity organisation funded by Rockefeller, among other people, that deals with crowd control, applying psychological techniques to society, and how to deal with mass brainwashing, essentially. Mm-hmm. That started in 1921, and in 1932 the directorship was taken over by a gentleman called Kurt Lewin, who was a German psychiatrist, and later he was taken over to America to start the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA.
Right.
A lot of the techniques were using sort of Operation Paperclip Nazi officers that were brought over to America.
This was after the war.
This was after the war, but obviously this was
yep.
before 1953. So you could assume that basically the official start date of 1953 was probably not. It was probably going on a lot of time before that. Right. In fact, if you wanted to research the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's passages in there that talk about trauma-induced dissociation, using potions to induce comas, and spells or hypnotic trance styles to enslave people and essentially make them mind controlled.
Now, the Americans are believed to have used mind control to do with the Korean War.
Well, MK Ultra was a response, officially, it was a response to Korean and Chinese mind control techniques. There was about 7,000 prisoners of war, American prisoners of war during the Korean War, and about 95% of them made full confessions to basically whatever charges were brought against them.
Right. So was this American prisoners or Korean?
This is American prisoners.
American prisoners.
And officially, in 1953, MK Ultra started to try and counteract these Korean brainwashing techniques.
Right.
There was psychiatrist Wolf and Hinkle sent a memo to Alan Dulles in 1953 explaining the Chinese and Korean methods of mind control. And essentially these were using isolation, sensory deprivation, putting people in stress positions so that they can't sleep, battering them with sound, and letting them know that there's no way of getting out of this without confessing to the crime that they're accused of. Mm-hmm.
So is that what you would term stress-based trauma then? Or
yeah, that is essentially stress-based trauma, but it's more using coercive methods and people's wants to be part of a greater whole. What they were doing in the Chinese methods, they would put the prisoners in a cell with several rabid pro-communists who would hate any deviation from the sort of state mandate, and they would let him know with violence and with psychological threats. And essentially, after so many weeks of this, your character becomes moulded to fit the society that you're in. The thing about the Chinese and Korean is that they used no artificial means. It was all to do with human weakness and coercion.
Okay. Now, with people like Mengele in World War II, he was a Nazi who, I believe, went to Argentina after the war.
Yes, yeah.
And his techniques were somewhat more sinister.
Well, basically, he used trauma bonding or trauma. It works like this. If you've ever been in a car crash or you've ever had severe depression or anything like that, you'll find that sometimes